So this is a MP5 clone. It's made in Turkey. It's the POF. I don't remember the specific, what it was called. I'll annotate it here, insert pictures, whatever. But it's a Turkish-made MP5, essentially. And one of the nice things about this specific model, unlike a lot of other options that are out there, is this one's actually made on HK machinery and parts. So that's kind of cool. So if you're going for, as HK as you can possibly get, correct wise, this is going to be one of the better options out there because it is actually made on HK machinery. So, again, this is made in Turkey. And if you're familiar with Turkish made stuff, it's either really good or really bad if you're looking at shotguns. And this is an example of one of the really good options out there. So the reason why I was actually interested in getting this is I've always wanted an MP5 because, let's face it, I grew up watching movies like Die Hard and all the 80s action flicks, that my dad recorded on VHS. So all those, 80s action movies where everybody's firing MP5s from the hips and everything. I've always wanted an MP5. It's just a cool gun. I don't consider this a practical gun by any stretch of the imagination. I know this is fighting words on the internet where everybody thinks the MP5 is the greatest thing ever for, PCC, and everyone wants a 9mm PCC or submachine gun or whatever you want to call it for home defense or whatever. Well, I'm not convinced that a 9mm round is as good as a 300 Blackout in the same size package. Again, if you're going to have a rifle size gun, it should have rifle size calibers. All right, so that aside, obviously this is not made for, home defense or anything like that. Could you use it? Sure. Yeah, fine. Whatever. It's better than a handgun. Absolutely 100%, but it's not as good as those, rifle calibers. So if you just want it for second cool and you don't care about the practicality, have at it, whatever. But on here, I bought this because I wanted to get something that was cheap. I'm not going to spend, $3,500 on an actual HK MP5 for, well, one, I'm poor. Two, that's the price of night vision. You could buy a good PVS-14 for that price or less. So to me, that wasn't worth it. So whenever I stumbled across this, it was on sale. I think it was Atlantic Firearms that sells these. Someone else might, but I think that's the only company I've seen that sells them. And it was actually affordable at the time. So at the time I bought it, it was around $1,400, somewhere in there. They had them on sale around Christmas, I believe, for about $1,200, and they sold out quick. It was $1,400 without the pistol brace, and then pistol brace like $200. So around $1,600, I got this entire thing. If you were smarter than me and waited until Christmas sales specials, then you could have gotten it for about $1,400. But again, because I was trying to save as much money as possible, I just put a whole bunch of cheap stuff on here to see if it would work, because I wasn't willing to spend a ton of money on, Surefire, handguard flashlights, and, good optics and all that kind of stuff. I just kind of put things up that were on here that were good enough to make it for a, a fun range toy. But obviously not something I would trust my life to per se. So kind of my entire reasoning or rationale for buying this gun, I want to kind of tell you all the different things I've done to it. So you can, if you want something similar looking than this, you want the cool factor, but you don't want to spend the, $600 on a four-in with a flashlight on it for a gun that's not really practical. This video is for you. So I did also, I'll kind of go over my testing that I did on the gun itself, and it was pretty much reliable completely with specific ammo types. I also tested, these are the Century Arms magazines. It comes with their guns. These were the cheapest ones I could find. This gun here only comes with one POF metal magazine, and all the magazines were completely reliable. I didn't have any problems with either of them. The quality on the Century Arms ones looks maybe a smidgen better. I think the finish on them is smoother, but practicality-wise, they all pretty much look the same. So how this gun comes out of box is with this little butt cap here that has a little sling swivel that just completely rotates all the way around. And this is for, just a sling so you can go 100%, Die Hard 80s action movies. And this attached to a sling will allow you to get a little bit more stability when aiming, but no one likes this. Let's be honest. You're all going to put one of those on there. And as of right now, yes, all this is perfectly legal, blah, blah, blah. Insert disclaimer here. But I took this off, immediately put that on there. One thing I did notice is the fit and finish on the SB Tactical brace. It needed a little bit of, not filing, but sanding in a couple areas to kind of smooth it out, because it was kind of scratching the finish on here. So once I got that smoothed out in a couple different places, I put some grease all the way around it. It slid right on, and it comes on and off easily now. Again, you can remove this pin, all that comes on and off. It just replaces the butt cap. I also replaced this handguard that it comes with. This is just your standard MP5 handguard, and as you can see on here, it has this little, well, it actually has cat hair on the inside too, but it has this little nub in here, and where that matters, it'll come into in a little bit, but I want you to kind of see what that looks like. So you can kind of see what you're going to have to replicate if you go that handguard route. There's nothing wrong with this handguard, but I wanted something with the light on it, and honestly, I just wanted this cool flashlight look, because everyone likes the Surefire handguard. Assuming this will focus. Everybody likes the Surefire handguard, but no one wants to pay a $600 price for it. Okay, the first thing I'm going to go over is the way I would attach a sling. And as you can tell from the wear around here, I put a single point sling on this gun. You can set it off however you want. And I actually ended up modifying, and I'll show you that here in a second. I had to modify just the cheapest sling, the single point sling I could find on eBay. And I think this was, I don't know, maybe $7, $8, something like that. This is just a single point sling that I chopped up. So when I went with the sling, obviously I went with the cheapest thing I could find, and eBay to the rescue. Here's the company I bought it from. Again, I think it was less than $10. It might have been more than that, but it was the cheapest sling, single point sling I could find. And since I didn't need anything that was, you know, super durable, it didn't really matter to me. And honestly, all the single point slings I've ever used, they're too long, and I'm a skinny dude, so I mean, if you're a bigger dude and you got some more girth to you to really spread that out, then maybe the single point will work for you. But for me, it always just hangs down and just, you know, bops me in the areas that you don't really want to be bopped in when you're moving around. So I've never liked single point slings for that reason. If I'm wearing body armor, it helps a little bit, but most slings, again, have way too much length for them, and so all it ends up doing is just, you know, smacking me a whole bunch of times while I try to walk around. So what I did is I modified a sling. So here is the sling right here, and you can tell it has a little bit of bungee to it, which fine, whatever. But it has this little 3-hook or a triangular little hook right here where the two pieces come together. It has a QD mount, you know, detached spot here, which great, fantastic. This part right here actually connected, if I remember right, to this piece, and this piece hung down really far. And this piece hung down, you know, like below that or whatever. So what I ended up doing, because I didn't need this giant dangler here to make it, you know, down by my knees, didn't need that long of a sling, I actually just cut it off, because again, this was attached to that piece over there, and I just zip tied it with a bunch of zip ties to here, and then put my QD on that. So this allowed it to be really, really high up against my body. Again, yes, it's super MacGyvered. I don't care. It works for me, and it actually holds it up where this is actually a usable single point sling with this, and it doesn't hang down too low. With body armor, it's perfect. Even without body armor, it's still not too low. So it works for me. You might see this in some of the videos. I'm pretty sure it's the one I was using, but it works perfectly fine. And again, for like, you know, $10, you can't beat it.
Either way, I'm having fun. Man, this gun is so pleasant to shoot.
One thing I will say too is another good option, which I didn't have this at the time, but is the KTactical. I've done some reviews on some of their stuff, and they've sent me a few different things to kind of look at, but this is one of their single point slings, and it again has kind of the bungee on one side, and you know, this is a actually an adjustable sling where you can see where you can grab one side. It has a slider on it, so you can use it as a single point sling, or you can detach this hook right here, and then you can use it as a 2-point sling and use it kind of like a traditional, like a Vickers or a Blue Force Gear or Magpul. So, and again, for the price, I think these are only like $20, something like that. They're not very expensive. So for the price, these are actually very well made, and this will work with the MP5, because again, this piece right here is not super long like it is on that other one where you don't need to cut it off. This one's actually usable because this piece right here is short. So next we're going to go over this rail mount right here. Now I'll show you this up close because everyone's going to want to see it. If you're familiar with the claw mounts for HKs, they just kind of clamp on. They have 4 little mounts or in the receiver that this kind of hooks onto. I don't know if you can see it down there or not. But these clamp mounts, that I'm assuming they're made by HK. I haven't looked too far into it, but the real ones are about $125, which to me for a section of pick rail is stupid. I'm not paying that. So what I decided to do is get on the old-fashioned Amazon and look and see what I could find. See if, you know, somebody in China made a copy of this thing. Sure enough, they do. This one's made out of aluminum. It feels kind of like that cheap pot metal stuff, so it's not the highest quality aluminum. It's not very like precision cut. It feels kind of rounded, if that makes sense, almost like it's a mold instead of milled, which it probably is. But the screws and the clamp part themselves are actual, they're either steel or some type of harder metal. It's not actually aluminum. So whenever I mounted this on there, I was actually able to snug it down, and it felt tight, like it wasn't going anywhere. So I have been using that mount the entire time I've had this gun. I shot it once with just the diopters, the drums that you can kind of switch, you know, the HK is known for. And yeah, those work just fine.
Personal preference. I love the freaking recoil on this thing, or lack thereof. It's awesome.
But that mount on here, as you can see, made in China. Here's the name of it. I'll put links to all this stuff down below. And again, this one worked perfectly fine for me. I haven't had any issues with it coming off. Now, would I trust it for, you know, a duty gun or whatever? Probably not. I mean, the thing was, I think $12, $15, something like that. It was cheap. So $12 for that compared to $125. Yes, please. I will take it. All right. And I know the majority of you are wanting me to get to the handguard. We're about to get there. The last little thing I had to do is, if you're familiar with thread protectors, this one's no different. It actually would come loose. It's just the thread protector here that unscrews, and you have the 1/2x28 threads underneath there. So you can thread on your suppressor or whatever muzzle device you want. It also has the tri-lug adapter on there for like HK suppressors or whatever. So you can put that on there if you want. Now, one thing I had to do, because this thread protector kept coming loose under recoil, and it was super obnoxious. I'd fire 5 to 10 rounds, and I'd have to retighten it. And you could tighten it as much as you wanted, and it kept coming loose, which was super annoying. So what I ended up doing was just buying a whole bunch of rubber gaskets and seeing which ones would fit underneath there. Is that a perfect solution? No, but I'm not ever going to shoot this thing to where it gets hot enough where it's going to melt it. But here's the things I bought off, or the O-rings I bought off Amazon. I don't remember if it was this one here, the 8x2 or the 7x2, but it was one of those two. Both of them actually fit on it, but one of them was just slightly better size-wise. So again, that was cheap, easy fix, and you can use these little rubber gaskets for all kinds of stuff. I repair stuff like this all the time with things like this. These are actually good as well, the smaller ones, for replacing parts on Surefire lights, because they have little gaskets on some of the lights to provide tension, as well as modifying certain things like the TLR1 HL. You can put it behind the switch and make the switch a little bit harder to turn. So you can use those for just about anything. And I think that whole box is like $10, so it was cheap. And it solved my problem completely. And usually if you're going to buy specific parts like this, you're going to pay $10 just to ship something anyway. So you might as well order that off Amazon and have a bunch of them for free. All right, so let's talk this handguard, because I know you're all interested. So this is actually, I did a lot of research to see if I can find something. And this is a handguard that's actually designed for airsoft guns. Assuming it'll focus. Come on now. So this handguard is actually designed for airsoft guns, but I was reading online and people were like, yeah, you can modify it to where it'll actually work on a real MP5. So I was like, okay. So here is the company. It's GMP. You can buy it off eBay, which is where I bought it. I think it's around $75. Again, compared to a Surefire, which is going to cost you $600, I was like, $75. I mean, it might as well be worth, you know, trying, because if nothing else, I'll just make a video about it and tell you whether or not it's good or not. And so as you can tell on here, it has just kind of your standard, if you can see in there, just your standard Cree, you know, cheapo light. But I think it's around 300 lumens, something like that. Maybe it's 400. But it's pretty good, and has, as you can tell in there, it actually has a really good hotspot. I would put it on par with probably a TLR1. The Streamlights, not the HL version, but their original 300 lumen one. I would say it's probably about on par with that. It's actually a really good light for how inexpensive and cheap it is. Now, whenever you're looking at it, I mean, it is 100% cheap feeling. Let's see if I can show you the other side as well. So you can see the front right here, it has this little mashy button. You can see it's activating the light, and pretty much anywhere along here, if you press on it and hold, it will light it up. Now, it is just a momentary light. There's no on-off switch like there is on the Surefire, so it's kind of annoying. So whenever you grip, you know, you kind of have to hold around like you normally would and just kind of pull, as you can tell. So it works. I mean, it's no Surefire, you know, obviously, but for the price, I mean, can you really be mad at $75? And obviously, I'll show you the other side too, so you can see what it looks like. So obviously, it works. And it looks cool, which is 100% the purpose. Everybody, I don't care who you are, likes that style of handguard on there. Now, do I wish this was a little bit more aesthetically pleasing? Sure, but I mean, it works just fine. Now, you will have to modify this thing. And I can't show you, how to modify stuff because YouTube is YouTube. But if you see down in there, hopefully you can see right down in there, there is actually tape, Gorilla tape that I stacked on top of itself. And I basically made a spacer because in here, and I'll show you pictures online, hopefully, there is no actual spacer inside of there that looks like this. So again, that's this piece right here. So on that piece, assuming this will focus, on the piece that's on the gun right now, it doesn't have this piece of plastic sticking out of there. It's just flat all the way down. And it also has like, almost like dovetail rails all the way down this side and all the way down this side that goes all the way down. And it, I assume, lines up into a groove on the airsoft version. You're going to have to take a Dremel and basically Dremel off some of that groove that sticks out back to probably about somewhere around here and somewhere around here. You just got to play with it until it gets tight on yours, because it'll pop out, these two tabs on that will stick out until you file it down. And it's basically just going over this hump in the receiver right here. So somewhere to about here-ish on the inside, you're going to have to Dremel that off. But you're going to have to also, now if you have a 3D printer, you can 3D print this and just super glue it on there. But you're going to have to basically replicate this little piece that sticks out, and that holds it tight up against the barrel or against the receiver. So as you can tell on here, if I push up, there's a little bit of play. You can see that, a little bit of play. And again, that's because there's nothing locking in to the receiver or right there to keep it in place. It's just basically friction. So it won't move up because I have the Gorilla tape. And then what's keeping it from moving down, again, I'm trying to get this on camera, so I apologize, is actually these little teeth that stick out, the little vents. So if I pull down hard enough on this, it will eventually, you could probably get it off. And you can see it kind of flexing there a little bit because this plastic is thinner because, again, it's made for an airsoft gun. But it's entirely serviceable. I can move this around and you can see it moving a little bit. But, I mean, it's not going to come off. And, again, I'm not using this for anything serious. So it works perfectly fine.
Light's not flickering so far, so hopefully you can see that on there. Oh, see how bad this offset is. Pretty bad. So, use the front sight post. Turn on. Light. Oh, airsoft light. Works on an actual MP5.
The brace on here, as you can tell, folds off to the side. And that's actually a pretty small, handy package. It would fit in a backpack or, wherever else you want to. And you can obviously still fire that way. I have. It doesn't cover the ejection port at all. It'll still eject just fine.
And I missed. I like the SB Tactical brace. Works well. So satisfying. Love this gun.
So the lower on this, as you can tell, is actually metal. So I wanted this version specifically. I saw the Century Arms versions and they have the polymer lowers or more the traditional HK. But I don't know, maybe it's my OCD, maybe it's just what I like. But I enjoyed this one because the lower match the upper, if that makes sense. They're the same color. So if you're familiar with the HK ones, they're kind of a dull matte. They're not quite gray, but they're not quite black. But it doesn't, this whole part here doesn't match the upper. And that kind of annoys me. If you're a purist, then yeah, get a, a Century Arms clone or something and it'll look more HK-ish. But I actually think this looks better. So that's why I went with that. It's metal. The safety on here, as you can tell, you can hear that click. It's fairly positive. It will go slightly past the safe, but it stops on the receiver. But safety works fine. You're going to need man hands to reach this magazine release. Just use the paddle like everybody else. But one of the nice things about these lowers is supposedly, now you'd have to verify this for yourself, and obviously you're going to have to do this legally, fill out the paperwork, yada, yada, yada. But these lowers are actually capable of being converted to full auto. There's just like a piece of metal that's been welded inside to prevent it from taking the full auto trigger pack or trigger parts or whatever. From what I've read, that's an easily removed piece, and then you can put, full auto stuff in there, provided, you do it legally. So that is one thing that these have going for them versus like the Century Arms and other copies don't have that ability. So if you're looking to, you know, fill out the paperwork and all that kind of stuff, and you have the ability to make it full auto, this is an option to actually make full auto. So that's kind of cool. The grip on here obviously is a little bit different. I actually like this grip. I don't have a problem with it. I've held real HK MP5s somewhat recently, and comparing the two, I don't really notice much of a difference. The finish on this is just fine. I haven't noticed any problems. I'm not going to go over all the specs on this because honestly, I don't care about that. And you can go to their website and read all those specs. And if you're too lazy to do that, you're probably too lazy to actually understand what all the specs mean anyway. So it's just going to be lost on you regardless. So let's talk about reliability. So with brass case ammo, 0 malfunctions. With steel cased ammo and aluminum case ammo, malfunctions. So I think I have video footage of it, but you can see on here the chamber is fluted, so that helps with extraction. What that means is that everywhere you see a little line, it basically means there's nothing contacting the case in the chamber. So that just means there's less in contact, less friction, so it can pull it out easier. You can increase the spring weight, I think, on these for the extractor, and that's supposed to help with extraction. I didn't have any problems with brass case, so I don't care. I'll just shoot brass case out of it. With the aluminum case, it would just kind of poop it out randomly. Every now and then you get good positive extraction, but most of the time it would just kind of barely chuck them out, and that was annoying. Once I realized that, I realized I'm going to have to shoot good ammo through it or just brass case. And even the cheapest brass case I shot through it shot just fine. Now, one thing I did also have a problem with, and I'll show you pictures of this as well. At one point when I was firing, I noticed the trigger wasn't pulling. And if you look down in here, it is safety check. I don't care what you think. You're not behind the camera, so you're perfectly fine. But if you look down in the chamber, you can see there's actually, well, if I can show you back here, there's actually a little bit of a gap back there behind the bolt to where a case can, in theory, get behind here and get down into the trigger parts and the guts. That actually happened to me because I was bench resting it, trying to zero the red dot on here. And I actually had one of the aluminum cases actually get stuck back inside the receiver. So I had to take off the brace here and, you know, pop that thing out. But I was mad at first because I thought that the gun actually had a problem. Then I realized it actually bounced off of my ammo can that was right next to it, right back into the receiver. So it wasn't the fault of the gun. It really wasn't even the fault of the ammo. It was just the fault of me putting my ammo can too close to it. But I thought that was worth mentioning. But as long as you're shooting brass case, you're not going to have any malfunctions. And I've shot at least 500 rounds of brass case through this, and I have not had a single malfunction with the brass case. With the aluminum case and steel case, you're going to have at least one malfunction per magazine, just because it doesn't extract reliably. All right, so I'm going to show you something that's a little strange. I don't know if this is common with MP5, but my bolt locked back and it ejected the round, or so I thought, or the case. It locked open like it would on an AR-15 on the last round, but there's still ammo in the magazine. So, but then the charging handle is just moving forward on its own, like it's just going back and forth. It's not attached to anything. I noticed the bolt is locked back. I'm like, this thing doesn't have a bolt lock hold open. So I smack it on the butt on the table here, and that allows the bolt carrier and everything to go home, whatever it's called. Bolt went home, and then I heard some rattling in there. I was like, that's probably not good. So I took it apart. I don't know if you can see down in there. There's a case right there on the left. It got somehow went behind the bolt. I don't know how that happened, but that's not good. I don't know if that's a problem with the MP5s in general or just this specific gun, but we'll see if this happens again. It's the first time this has happened. Maybe from here you'll be able to see the ejection pattern a little bit better. Yeah, did you see that last round? It just kind of barely dumped out. Normally, it should be ejecting over there and almost hitting my camera. It at least fed through those, but let me load up some brass case so you can see what it should look like when it's ejecting normally. I apologize if the wind noise is horrendous, but nothing I can do about it. So this is brass case. This is also Blazer, but it's their brass case stuff. I haven't had any malfunctions with anything other than that aluminum case stuff. So you can see how it's ejecting. See how it's kind of chucking it over the camera? One of them kind of not quite pooped out, but didn't eject as violently. But most of the time they're arcing their way out of here. So
That is what it normally does with brass case. And to be fair, it does it with the Century Arms magazines as well as the Turkish mags that came with it. So I don't think it's a mag issue, but I didn't clean them either, and they're kind of have cosmoline in it, so that could be something. I don't know, but works fine with brass.
All right, the last little bit I'll mention is magazine pouches. So I was using the, let's see if I have them around here somewhere. I do. I was using the Ido Gear mag pouches. The, I forgot what they're called, but the rubbery ones. So as you can see, here's my belt, and this is upside down right now. So these were the mag pouches I was using, and I was just inserting the mags just like this. Again, these are just standard pistol mag pouches, and these fit perfectly fine. They actually, since they're kind of a rubber material, they have really good grip on these things, so they're actually fairly hard to pull out. Now, whenever they're fully loaded and you're pulling on them, they come right out, but they're not just gonna fall out on their own, is what I'm getting at.
With reloads with this, I found it easiest. Like, you can shove them straight in, and maybe that's where people have problems loading with a full mag, with the closed bolt. Whenever the bolt's closed, it is more difficult to shove the mag in, but it's not impossible. You just have to kind of muscle it in there. If you rock it, kind of like AK style, kind of put it in at an angle, and then rock it back in, you hear that click. It's way easier to shove it in that way, especially on a closed bolt. So whenever I'm reloading, I don't bother pushing straight in because it's not always stuck all the way in there. I've had it try to come out once, but I just kind of put it in an angle and then kind of rock it back in, and it works just fine at that point. So obviously, if you lock it back, it goes in way smoother. Like, there's no resistance now whatsoever. There is a little bit of wobble. I don't care. It's a stamped receiver gun. Again, this is brass case stuff. Just to kind of show you, I just want to shoot it. There's absolutely no recoil on this gun, and I love it. If you want just a fun gun to shoot at the range, or someone who's recoil sensitive, this is it. Shoots pistol ammo, so it's cheap, but it offers, you know, something similar to a rifle size, so you get, you know, more points of contact, so it's easier to control the recoil. The thing's accurate too, but man, this gun's fun. I wish it was full auto.
So if you are looking for mag pouches for these, again, you could just use these like rifle mag pouches, but for the MP5. And for the range, these work great. I didn't have any problems with these. I actually set up one of my other belts to run specifically with the MP5, but these work just fine even in the front. They don't really get in the way of anything. But thought I would mention that in case you're looking for a cheap pouch for the MP5s. Don't bother buying like submachine gun pouches. It's just a waste of money. These but again, hopefully you enjoyed this video and kind of all my tips, you know, tricks and redneck ingenuity, I guess, on things that I did with this gun. So hopefully you appreciate that and appreciate the money savings that I went through to save you money, I guess. Now, granted, I did it mainly for me, but, you know, side benefit, it affects you all as well. So hopefully you all appreciate this. If you have any questions, feel free to comment down below. Again, I 100% recommend this gun. If you're going to buy an MP5 and you don't want to spend, you know, high dollar on an actual HK, this one works perfectly fine. It's an MP5 for all intents and purposes. I really enjoy it, and I will say the recoil on this gun is phenomenal.
Tell you what, there's nothing more satisfying than this right here. Love it. Puts a smile on my face. And I can say, first couple shots, which again were earlier, but the recoil on this is significantly better than something that's like a direct blowback, like something like a CZ Scorpion, for instance, or an AR-9. Much more pleasant to shoot. The other pistol caliber carbines that are direct blowback very much are punchy. This one is noticeably smoother. It's not like 22 smooth, but I would say it feels maybe more like an AR, maybe it's slightly lighter, but it's like delayed a little bit, which, you know, delayed lower roller lockup, whatever it's called. You feel that. You can feel that a little bit of a delay, but it's very soft shooting. So far out of all the PCCs I've shot, this is my favorite when it comes to just recoil management. So it actually finally does something that people like PCCs for, you know, compared to something like a rifle. And empty. I like it.
But if you know somebody that's recoil sensitive or a new shooter, or you just don't want to have any recoil on your gun, like this is a phenomenal gun for that. It is just the funnest gun. I don't know if that's a word, but it's the most fun gun I own, including all my ARs and everything else. This thing is just a absolute blast to shoot. So again, hopefully you appreciated this. Go out and buy one if they're even in stock right now. Last I looked, I didn't see them in stock anywhere, so good luck. But if you find them, know it is a really good deal. I highly recommend it. And all the modifications I've made, if you want to save some money and get the cool looks without the, empty wallet after the fact, go with that. So anyways, hopefully y'all appreciate this and have a good one.